Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching Pucknology Pregame, aka Pregaming with Pucknology, or whatever we want to call it. We haven't really decided on a name. Welcome in. We're right before Sharks Blues Game 5. Pivotal game. Team that wins Game 5 in a 2-2 series goes on to win 78% of the time. So needless to say, this is a big game. I would say it's the biggest in Sharks history. I don't think there's any debate about that. Because they win tonight, they're probably going to the finals. And wowie, that would be a thing now, wouldn't it? So we got a lot of things lined up for you today. First, though, could ask if you hit the little subscribe button down below. Help us out a lot. That way you get our stuff every time we do this. We're here after every game. We're here for some pre-games and some other extra little things there. So it's a good time. Tune in tonight for Pucknology After Dark, live reaction show. We'll take your tweets, your comments, all that, read them on air. And today you can tweet at us, interact with us using the usual hashtag. We're going to go ahead and hijack the hashtag Pucknology After Dark. You can tweet at us using that. You can tweet directly at me, at ChrisJWS. I am joined by Ian Reed. He is at iReadPucknology. And with that, introduce my compadre here. I don't know if he's quite ready yet because might be some kids things. But Ian Reed, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good. I'm full of just nervous energy today. Like I feel confident that the Sharks can win, but it doesn't make me any less nervous for tonight's game. I've tried to write like a Memorial Cup article like 4 times, and I couldn't focus enough just because of the energy.
Yeah, you got the jitters right now. I mean, I'm just like, I think that I'm pretty confident they can win. I think they will, but man, I'm nervous because I say it's the biggest game in franchise history. And so coming up in a few minutes here, we'll wait to see when he joins, but we will be having a guest, Matt Sammons from the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's their director of broadcasting. So we're gonna have him on here for about 15 minutes. We're gonna talk some about that series. We're gonna get his perspective on the Sharks, and not to jinx it, but that what if it's a Lightning Sharks final. So he should be on in the next few minutes here. When that comes, we'll introduce him and get right down to it. So with that caveat, let's talk a little bit about tonight's game and be ready to just break it off and go straight to the guest. But Ian, what's your feeling on tonight's game? What are the big things going on?
Tonight's game, the Sharks, obviously, it's going to come down to, can they go back to playing the way they did in games 1 through 3? They look just really, in game 4, they look really discombobulated. They look like a team that had spent 48 hours reading about how great they are. And if they show up for another game like that, then they're in trouble. But I think if they can go back and they can play their game, which they did, in those shutout games where the first line was just completely, the Blues had no answer for the first line. Not very many answers to the second line. And the power play's got to click. Good power play, Sharks win. It's generally been the trend this postseason. So I think those are the big factors.
Yeah, agreed. Last game was pretty disappointing. I mean, I think it was partially the Sharks were sloppy, but the Blues also, I mean, they had to come to play. If they lose that game, the series is pretty much over. Like you're staring at a 3-game deficit, very unlikely. So the Blues had to come to play, but I think the Sharks now, they had the pressure on. They don't get no freebies at this point. They lose tonight, high chance they lose the series. So I expect both teams to come out really hard this game, and it's just a matter of who can get their forecheck going, and special teams battle. Sharks need to be less sloppy because if they get those special teams opportunities and they play good on the power play, they're gonna slice and dice them, because that power play, when it's clicking, which is more often than not, is just straight lethal. There is no better power play in this playoffs right now.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, and definitely by saying all that, I don't want to discount what the Blues did. They did a lot of the right things to win that game, and it's certainly, it wasn't just, oh well, the Sharks took a game off and the Blues suck. No, it's the Blues are still a good team. They hadn't put their game together as well as they did, but yeah, I mean, they gotta put it together. Jake Allen, I think, was also helped them too, because he's much better puck handler than Brian Elliott, and I think when you have a guy who can handle the puck like that, it makes it really hard to get that zone time that the Sharks have just been feasting on.
Yep, and I think the adjustment they gotta make is they gotta remember what it was like to play against Pekka Rinne, also a pretty good puck handler. get that going again. Channel Game 5 and Game 7. Speaking of which, by the way, did you know, I have a stat for you, Ian.
Okay.
I gave this on Twitter, but did you know that if you don't count all the big games the Sharks have won, they've actually never won a big game?
That's true. That's an absolute fact. If you discount all the big games they've won, they've never won a big game. I have a hard time disputing that logic.
Yeah, I know. It's just, for those of you who don't know, it's a little play on some of the Twitter negativity. The Sharks never play big in a big game. They played big in some big games. They've lost some big games.
Yeah,
probably they've lost more than they've won, but they have shown up big. Games 5, Game 7, they've shown up big, and that's why I feel like they can do it again. This team this year has been incredibly resilient. So we should be joined any moment now by Matt Sammons. He's just told me he's installing the G-Talk plugin, so it's I guess it's first time using this thing, but yeah, so we'll expect him on any moment now and introduce him. So those of you who don't know, we're being joined by Matt Sammon in a few minutes here. He's director of broadcasting for Tampa Bay Lightning, Tampa Bay Storm, self-described radio nerd, and alumnus of Alabama. If you want to follow him on Twitter, his handle is @SammonSays, spelled S-E-Z for the says part. So he hosts the Lightning Power Play podcast, available on iTunes, and yeah, he should be joining us any moment now. So I'm getting the introduction out of the way there, so we're not burning any of our valuable time with him. He's come on very generously and agreed to talk with us, and that's awesome. You know, getting better and better guests these days. So yeah, just any moment now. So I mean, let's talk a little bit about the Pittsburgh and Tampa Bay series, kind of get everyone primed for that. Last night, Tampa Bay won that critical Game 5. They took it back from Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh initially jumped out to a big lead. Tampa Bay fired right back, and they brought it, and they'll probably win that series now. And with that, right on cue, thank you for joining us, Matt. So I already introduced you while we were waiting for you to join there. It's Matt Sammon, Director of Broadcasting for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So thank you very much for joining us, Matt. We appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thanks for having me on. Can you hear me okay? Everything look good?
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Good. I love technology. Let me click on this link. We're ready to go. Oh, I got to download this. I got to download that. I got to download that. So we're here. Thank you very much.
Awesome. So let's get right down to it. So we were just kind of talking a little bit about your series over there. You know, big Game 5 win for you guys last night. So I know last year the Lightning was in a similar situation. They won Game 5, then New York came out and just hammered them in Game 6, but they eventually got it done in Game 7. How do you feel about this coming up Game 6? How do you think they're going to come out?
I think they're going to come out with a sense of purpose, and it really goes back to that experience last year. In fact, the team landed in Tampa about 3 or 4 hours ago, and that was the message. They just said, we need to go in with a different mentality than we did Game 6 last year against the Rangers, and I honestly believe that they're going to do that. Now, that doesn't guarantee a win, but I do believe that they're going to come in with the mindset of, we have a chance to close the series out now. Just by going out on the ice doesn't guarantee that. We have to do our job and face probably the toughest opponent in their toughest situation thus far. Interesting stat that I pulled out from last year's playoffs. When the Lightning had a chance to close out a series, they were 3-3 in that situation. Wow. This year, 2-0 already. They had a chance to close out Detroit and the Islanders in Game 5. They did it, and they're going to try to do the same tomorrow night. And I've got a good feeling that they're certainly going to put their best foot forward.
Awesome. So goaltending's been a big story on this on both sides, with Bishop going down and Lightning not really missing a beat there. And then on the other hand, you have Marc-Andre Fleury taking over for Matt Murray. What did you think of that whole ordeal last night? I saw you on Twitter a little bit, but if you want to expound on that.
Yeah, I went on a rant a little bit. I thought it was interesting because going into yesterday's game, you hear people say, boy, Marc-Andre Fleury is terrible in the playoffs. And we know that he's had some rough stretches here and there, so I thought, let me see how truthful this statement is. I know he's had some rough playoff years, but let me dig into the numbers. And when I did, if you go from the start of the 2010 playoffs, of course, Penguins won the Cup in 2009, so start of 2010 playoffs through his relief appearance in Game 4, his save percentage was .896, and that's in 50 games, 48 of them starts. That's very average. In fact, it's really below average in terms of a number one goaltender. So when I looked at that, I just threw it out there on Twitter, and I said, just kind of, hey, I'm going to leave this here for you, because most people can look at that stat and go, that's really not that good. And my message was, if the Lightning could get 30 shots on goal, then they stood a good chance to beat them. Now, the Penguins did a great job of blocking a lot of shots last night, but even though the Lightning only got 25 shots, they didn't hit the 30 plateau, you could clearly see that Fleury was not that comfortable. So I pretty much railed on the Penguins after that point. Probably went a little too overboard, but I was excited. But it's interesting because Mike Sullivan, I don't know if it's gamesmanship or if he's truly conflicted here, but he says that he's not going to select a goaltender until Game 6, or at least until tomorrow. We'll find out. And I would hope, if I'm a Penguins fan, I'm hoping it's just gamesmanship, because if you're really sitting there today and it's almost 6 o'clock Eastern and you're going, oh, gee, I wonder who's going to be in net, you're done. I mean, there's just nothing good there. Now, in relations to the Bishop and Vasilevsky situation, of course, Ben Bishop injured, so the Lightning had no choice. They had to go to Andrei Vasilevsky. I think he's done well. Vazzy tends to play better when he gets more starts. When he gets game after game after game after game, he does well, and we've seen that. He's certainly held down the fort at the very least. I actually had a fan ask me after the game on our postgame show, when Bishop gets healthy, do you go back to Bishop or do you keep Vasilevsky? And I think there's a big difference here between what the Lightning are going through and what the Penguins are going through, and that is the fact that Mike Sullivan went from Matt Murray to Marc-Andre Fleury and perhaps maybe going back to Matt Murray tells me that they don't have the faith in Matt Murray to bounce back from a tough loss. It's not like he had a bad game 4. I know he allowed 4 goals, but honestly, if I'm the head coach here, I'm putting Murray back out there in Game 5, basically dangling over his head the idea, hey, you saw number 29 was in there cleaning up after you in period 3. Go out there and play well, and I would think he would play well. I think the Lightning, when Ben Bishop comes back, they go back to Bishop, and it's not a slight on Vasilevsky. I just think right now, until Bishop is 100%, they feel that Vazzy's the guy. They've got complete confidence in him, and based on his performance so far, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, agreed. I mean, Bishop is saving like a 94% clip right now. I mean, both have been great, but Bishop has been crazy. So, one other question. So, do you think if they end up having a successful run here, I mean, it's already successful, but let's say they lift the cup without Stamkos playing, does that have any effect on if he comes back next year, do you think, or?
It's hard to say. Let's say the Lightning does win the Stanley Cup and Stamkos doesn't play any games, and that is quite possible given the injury he's dealing with right now. I think at that point, then it's a situation of it's on Steven Stamkos, and it's hey, it's different, but you can always come back and try to win one, actually skating in these games. I think with the situation with him, however, that's one of many things this organization is going to have to tackle during the offseason. One is Nikita Kucherov is now owed a very big raise. He's a restricted free agent. The process of re-signing Victor Hedman starts, as he will be an unrestricted free agent after next season. And I think the Stamkos situation, that's kind of the first domino, I think. And there's a couple other decisions that need to be made, but certainly Stamkos, Kucherov, and Hedman in that order need to be sorted out, as well as trying to predict where the goaltending goes, because Bishop is an unrestricted free agent after next season as well. So the Stamkos domino's the big one. If the team were to win the Stanley Cup and he only has a minimal impact in terms of ice time, I think it really just goes back. The ball's in his court. Hey, you won a Stanley Cup, but if you want to come back and try to win another one and actually participate in the games, then that's really up to him, and then maybe you get a deal out of him. Who knows?
I guess that was my next question, actually, was because you brought up the Ben Bishop contract. Is if Stamkos stays, does that is it Stamkos or Bishop at that point? Does one of them have to go to make room for the other? with Vasilevsky's play?
Possibly. I think there's two trains of thought here. One is, and let's talk about Vasilevsky. In the 24-year history of the Tampa Bay Lightning, they have never drafted a goaltender, brought him up through the system, made him a number one. They've had some good goaltenders over the years, but have never really created a number one goaltender from the draft until, becoming a number one in the NHL. It was clear when Vasilevsky was chosen with the second first-round pick that the Lightning had in 2012 that that was their goal. They thoroughly believe in this guy. He will be the number one someday. So the question is it after Bishop's contract expires next season, or do you drag it out a little bit? Now, in relations to the Stamkos contract, let's say Stamkos does resign, and let's just for argument's sake say it's $10 million, and there's 1/7 of your cap there. The Ben Bishop option is a possibility. That's $6.5 million, and you're not guaranteed the same type of performance now than, say, 2-3 years down the road. But at the same time, if you look at two models here, one is the one that a lot of successful teams are doing these days, Chicago, LA, Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay too, is that you're building your team around a core of about 4 players. So if you look especially at Chicago, it's Taves, it's Kane, it's Keith, it's Seabrook. Everybody else is expendable, and you just plug in the various parts there. Detroit has done that for many years as well, and of course, look where our general manager's from. So I would have to say it's not a definite that Ben Bishop would be the first guy out if Stamkos were to resign, but I would have to say that look at the model, see if you can figure out who the core 4 players are, and realize anybody else, including some fan favorites, would be expendable if their price is a little too high to keep the whole thing together and under the cap.
Yeah, it's tough, but it's a better problem to have than not having two talented guys, right? So let's do a couple questions real quick on the Sharks. We'll just leave it open-ended for you. I assume you've been watching at least a bit. What are your impressions of the Sharks Blues series?
I'm really impressed that both teams have gotten to this point, and I'm not undermining them. It's first with the Blues, I know a lot of people made them the chic pick this year. But I said, if St. Louis can just get through the mental hurdle of finally beating Chicago, I liked them matching up with Dallas. I thought they could get this far. And the Sharks, I'll be honest with you, when they got the Kings in the first round, I went, woof, forget about that. And I know there were a lot of Sharks fans that actually went, oh, God, not again. But give them credit. Yeah. Much like the Blues and the Blackhawks, the Sharks found a way, and they took care of the Kings in very quick fashion. So it's impressive how both of these teams have gotten here. I think it's pretty interesting how the series, the Western Conference series, has very similarly followed the Eastern Conference script, if you will. Not to say this is predetermined, but the Blues came out and got Game 1. They struggled against the Sharks in 2 and 3, really made a statement in Game 4. Same thing here. Lightning win Game 1, struggle in 2 and 3, turn the series around with a Game 4 win. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes from there. I like both teams, but what's interesting about the Sharks is because they were not the chic pick to come out of the West, they're surprising some people, but look at the talent out there. Of course, everyone knows Joe Thornton and Patrick Marleau, but I still, to this day, believe Joe Pavelski is quite possibly the most underrated scorer in this league. And it's funny, last season I had a conversation with Dan Rusanowski, the radio voice of the Sharks, and he was talking about how it was an interesting transition year because you wanted to keep that core, Pavelski, Marleau, Thornton, but you had to bring in some of this younger talent, Tomas Hertl, for example. They needed a goaltender. They got Martin Jones. So, it was an interesting mix. It didn't quite work out last year, but it's all coming together this year. And they're a dangerous team. They're a little off the radar, despite the fact being one of the final 4 teams in the conference or in the NHL.
Definitely. So one last question. It's a little bit off of the current topic, but former Shark Dan Boyle, also former Lightning, is retiring. I think you've been to Tampa during his run there, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
What are some of your favorite memories of him?
Yeah, I've been fortunate. I've worked with the Lightning in some form or fashion for 15 years now. So I was actually here before Dan Boyle, believe it or not. One of the things that I remember about Danny Boyle was he was a cast-off from the Panthers. He just did not fit in with the Panthers, just could not, for whatever reason, work under Mike Keenan. A lot of players can't for whatever reason. And I'll never forget that he was traded to the Lightning for a fourth-round draft pick. The player who was drafted by the Panthers with that fourth round has never played in the NHL. At last check, was playing some low-level minor league team, or for a low-level minor league team, I think in Danbury, Connecticut. I mean, the guy's never panned out. Yet Boyle has been a key cog for a lot of teams, and I know it was a pretty disastrous end for him in New York, but the day, a lot of people don't know that when the Lightning won the Stanley Cup in 2004, Dan Boyle, his groin muscles were basically being held by a thread. I mean, he battled through a lot of injuries. He had a tough learning curve with John Tortorella, but they were able to make it work. And the day that we traded him to San Jose, it was great for the Sharks, but that was a tough, tough day. That was the Cowboy owners, as Tortorella would call them. Jay Feaster got out of the way and got out of the organization before that trade was done. It's quite arguably one of the worst trades in franchise history. And the franchise never really recovered from that because, as you know, when Dan was in his prime, he was he could be a defensive liability at times, but in terms of the transition game, getting the puck up the ice, a power play quarterback, when Dan was in his prime, he was one of the best in the league, and the Lightning did not have that. You could argue up until maybe last season the maturation of Victor Hedman, bringing in a guy like Jason Garrison, Anton Stroman. So the Lightning went about 5-6 years with nothing in that position because of the trade of Dan Boyle. He was missed, but he's such a great guy. I hope that he comes back and retires here because it sounds like Brad Richards and Vinny LeCavier are going to do the same thing. So it's going to help out our alumni team real well. Their golf game is going to pick up quite a bit. But he was a great guy. And like I said, I wish it ended a little better than how it did in New York for him on a personal level. But he made some great memories here. And again, coming in as just a cast-off really from the Panthers, he made the best of that opportunity and turned out a pretty good career 14, 15 years later after just being dealt for next to nothing. And an undrafted defenseman, too, out of Bowling Green. Give the Panthers some credit for finding him, but a lot of people look at Marty St. Louis, Tyler Johnson for undrafted free agent stories, but Dan Boyle was maybe the first one in team history to do that.
Yeah, he was fantastic. I mean, we loved him here for obvious reasons, but he was a great guy. Like, anyone who met him had nothing but great things to say about him. And with that, I want to thank you for coming on. We don't want to take up too much of your time. We really appreciate you coming on here. Really, really great conversation. So let's do this again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, and hopefully we're both doing it again in a few days with the Stanley Cup Final just around the corner.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, thanks a lot, Matt.
All right, take care, guys.
Thanks.
That was Matt. He is the director of broadcasting. Sorry, Matt Sammons. He's the director of broadcasting with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Sorry, I'm like blanking out right now. You can find him on Twitter at Sammons Says, SAMMONSEZ. He had some interesting things to say there about both series. Like, what were your thoughts there, Ian? I know we kind of just let him go with the various questions and let him.
No. It's I mean, I didn't really disagree with anything he said. I thought when you're looking at the Tampa Pittsburgh series, I did not like the decision to go back to Marc-Andre Fleury at all. And I understand that because, Matt Murray is a rookie goalie that, obviously there was like this buildup of anticipation for Marc-Andre Fleury to take back the net. But I really thought that mistake might cost him the series. It really might. And, I do think it's gamesmanship. I do think they go back to Matt Murray. But if they go back to Marc-Andre Fleury, then congratulations, Tampa Bay. You're off to the Cup final, and I don't want to jinx anything by saying that, but it's. I don't like Pittsburgh, and I've liked Pittsburgh this whole postseason. I mean, I picked Pittsburgh to win this series, but I don't like Marc-Andre Fleury back Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I agree, and I know some people say it's a panic move. I know it was a panic move, but I think it was definitely the devil or something like that. But yeah,
Right.
It just seems to me like you should have just ridden, ride with the guy who got you there. Like,
yeah,
at that point you're already in trouble, so you might as well just ride it out.
Right. I mean, this is what the Sharks are thankfully doing the opposite. They let Reimer come in, and Reimer played. Reimer wasn't bad. He wasn't super amazing, but he did what you would expect him to do coming in after playing no games for since forever. And I thought he did okay, but Jones is the guy. You go back to Jones today, and that's I feel like that's what they should have done. So hopefully, by doing the right thing, that the Sharks will hold on and carry on tonight.
Yeah, and Pittsburgh's a little different case than any of the other Final Four teams. Like the other teams, they all have a solid 1 and 2. Like, or not just solid, but I mean it's debatable on at least 2 of the 3. If you're talking the Sharks and the Blues, it's debatable which one's better. Is it is it Elliott or
Jake Allen?
Jake Allen? Is it Reimer or Jones? I mean, honestly, you could take any one of those 4, and you're doing good. Like, those are all really good. So, and Tampa Bay, I don't know a lot about their backup and how his stats look decent, but he's doing a good. He's definitely doing a good job, and he's feeling. He's doing the not stay locked thing. He's keeping them afloat while they're waiting for their guy to get back. And then Pittsburgh, it's not a very steady situation there. And I think that's probably about it on the Eastern Conference. I know people are like, talk about the Sharks. I can just imagine Slushy's there in the chat probably saying that already. But it's good to watch all the games, but also there's again, I don't want to jinx it. There's a realistic possibility we could see a Tampa Bay versus Sharks final. Didn't get a chance to touch on it with Matt since he only had 50 minutes there, and he was very generous to come on. He showed up, did a great job there. But there's a very real possibility of that. Like, it's kind of crazy to think about. And again, don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but it could really happen. So that's why I start paying attention now to the other teams, because in a week you might be very interested in one of those teams,
in one of the Eastern Conference teams for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I had a few questions that I want to throw out there that we prepared, because we had way more questions than we had time for, but you figure be over prepared than under prepared.
Yeah.
But and you I don't know how much you follow the Lightning, but how do you think they would handle facing up against the Thornton Pavelski hurdle line? Because that seems to be the big question in every matchup with the Sharks, is how the opposing team handles that matchup, because that matchup is so critical.
I think Victor Hedman would make their life absolutely miserable, because he's that good. And it'd be interesting to see, because I know Hedman does chew up a lot of minutes, and it'd be interesting to see. The thing with the Sharks is the benefit there is that you have your first and second line, which really have been kicking in the offense. So it'll be interesting to see, would Hedman play against the Thornton Pavelski hurdle line, or are they playing against the Couture Donskoy Marlowe line? So I think that would be an interesting question too. Or does he play against both and just eat up a crap ton of minutes?
I imagine there's a good chance also that's another case where the coaches on the given sides are going to want to dictate those matchups, because in the Blues series so far, it seems like matchups hasn't been as big of an issue as it was against the Predators. Against the Predators, matchups were everything. That's why we won the games we won and lost the games we lost, because that top line on our side just had a hard time with their top line.
But beyond Hedman, like I haven't really been impressed with Stralman since he's come back. I don't know if he came back too soon. I was hoping we get to ask that, but I know we were just pressed for time. So Stralman, I don't love their decor beyond Hedman, to be completely honest. And I think that the Sharks could exploit that. But this is still, again, this is a playoff tested decor too. I mean, this is there's a few guys that are new there, but mostly these are the same guys that got them to the finals the last year. So you don't want to completely underrate them. I think the Sharks would have some trouble with Vasilevsky's speed. Not Vasilevsky's speed, but the Lightning speed in general.
Yeah, I mean, it could look a lot like the Kings series in terms of how they handle the defense, because it seems like there is a fair bit of drop off. I mean, and yes, they are playoff destiny, as you mentioned, though. But the Kings guys, they were largely, they had been around, for a lot, for a lot of the time there, so they're pretty familiar and knew the routine. But I think there's less drop off than with the Kings. But that was a big thing, right? Is when Doughty wasn't on the ice, the Sharks could go to work. Yeah, even when he's on the ice, I think they wore him down as that series went on, because he was logging like 30 minutes a night. I think there was one.
Well, he had to do 40,
right?
Yeah, I mean, he had to do everything. He was the problem with Doughty was that he had to do everything. He had to penalty kill, he had to power play, he had to just play, and he just there was more. He tried to do more than you could ever expect anyone. I don't care if you're Bobby Orr or any of those guys like through history. You're not going to be able to do that and push through like Doughty tried to do. It's impossible. And when Martinez being out, I mean that was a really weak decor beyond that.
Yeah, and it's funny, Puck guys in the chat saying if the goalie has speed, we're in trouble.
Yes.
This is very true. But yeah, the point stands, that always does seem to be one of the Sharks' problems all season long, is those really speedy teams. And I don't think I've watched enough Tampa Bay to really compare them to some of the ones that gave the Sharks trouble, because most of the ones that gave the Sharks trouble also didn't make the playoffs because they weren't. That was like their one thing they did well, was they were fast, like the Calgarys of the world and the Oilers, but they were fast, but literally that's all they had. They didn't have a whole lot else, and the Sharks would lose a lot of those games, but again, not playing them in the playoffs, they're playing against the heavier grinding, slower paced teams. Some of them are fast, but a lot of them tend to be kind of, to borrow a term from basketball, tend to be more half court teams. They aren't playing. They are playing like up and down the ice, isn't the track meet. There's going to be a lot more forechecking, breaking up the neutral zone, having to chip and chase, grind along the boards and do all that fun stuff. And the Sharks can do that, and they've proven this time and again.
Yeah, I think they'd be in tough. I mean, it's a Stanley Cup Finals. You should be in tough if you're in the Stanley Cup Final. But
no, I'm sorry. Every team that has ever won the Stanley Cup, Ian, has gone 16-0. Don't you know?
That's right. Oh, you're right.
They never lose. They never lose.
You're right. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Again, we're a little bit of jokes about some of the Twitter stuff we see. Because I mean, I apologize to anyone I've screamed at on Twitter in the last couple of days. Just there's a little bit too much. Like, it seems like Sharks fans have two modes. Yay, we're gonna win the cup, and oh crap, here we go again. It's all over. It's like, guys,
I hope that everyone
try to enjoy this.
Yeah, like that's I think that's my thing too. It's like, am I a Sharks apologist? I don't think I am. I try not to be. I try to keep my, especially when I'm like on here, TTG or whatever, I mean, the reason I'm the Canadian robot, angry robot, is because I really try to maintain a decent level of objectivity. And I try not to get too high and I try not to get too low, but I still, I'm still trying to enjoy the playoffs. And I think that the Sharks have a great opportunity to do something special here. And I don't think that Game 4 suddenly just erases Games 2 and 3. Like, we've seen this before. We've seen this year multiple times. What's wrong? Oh, 1 second. We've seen this multiple times where the Sharks have gone down. They went down the 2 games in Nashville and they came back and they stormed back to a big Game 5. I'm confident. I mean, am I guaranteeing a victory tonight? No, but I'm not. At the same time, I'm not like throwing in the towel and the playoff series is over and, blah, 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 blah. Like, I don't have a crystal ball, so I'm going to watch the game tonight and find out.
Yep. And Nick Tippett's pointing out in the chat, Sharks are 2-0 in Game 5. So, it's a good omen. Hopefully that continues to be the case. And they played one of those on the road, one of those away. So, there's no reason why they can't win in St. Louis again. They did it before. They nearly won Game 1. Honestly, I think they were the better team 3 out of the 4 games. Or, okay, 2 clearly, 1 arguably, and then the other one clearly not. Yeah, that's why I feel pretty good about Game 5. For the most part, the Sharks have played really well. They've had one bad game, and we're looking for a reason to start worrying again because we're so used to being let down. But I think that's why I try and take this on its own. The last time they made the playoffs was 2 years ago.
Yeah,
the core has a lot of the same pieces, but this is not the same team. Every team has its own journey, And every like this team, the bottom lines are very, very, very different. Different goaltender. You have some of the main engines are still there, but even more so now with more Couture, more Pavelski than there was back then, more Hurdle, and then you have Donskoy, who's just the freaking magician that he is.
Carlson, the auxiliary pieces are better than they've ever been, in my opinion.
And absolutely,
and that's the big difference. This is why this isn't, this is 2016. It's not 2013. It's not 2012. It's not 2010 or whatever. It's a different team. The Sharks are, I think they're deep enough to make a run. They've been deep enough so far. They're in the conference finals. They've answered the bell. Anytime that we've been worried, they've answered the bell. I think they're 4-1 after dropping a game. They've come back to win the next one. And this series isn't a home ice series. This series has been basically a free for all, because both the games they took home ice away, and then they lost home ice gave home ice back to the Blues. There's really no rhyme or reason to this series, and there's just I'm not guaranteeing a victory, but this game is very winnable. So I think if you look at things like that, I think I try to enjoy it. I mean, I get it. There's been disappointments in the past, and I know that those still kind of creep in the back of my head too. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's not like I'm just, saying that what we saw yesterday isn't something, or, game 4 isn't something we've seen before. We have, but we've also seen the Sharks respond differently this year when they've had those games.
What are you talking about? They have not won any big games, Ian.
That's right.
Yeah, ever. No, but this team has responded. They bounced back. They've handled adversity all year long. And that's one of the things that annoys me, is whenever the Sharks can't handle adversity. No, yes, they can. They lost Logan Couture. Not a small piece of the team.
No.
They work through a lot of those early hiccups. I mean, you remember how bad the defense was for the first 2 or 3 months. I mean, it was predictable every game. There were odd man rushes. There was going to be at least one burn slide. Just it was always so bad. There was so many bad moments. But that defense now is pretty darn solid. The bottom 2 are a little questionable, but overall they aren't a huge liability like they were early in the season. I'm sure everyone remembers how that looked. I mean, we were calling it tire fire 2015 or
2016. It was brutal. This team, you know what? And the other thing too is, at this point, and again, this is not to be a Sharks apologist or whatever, but should things go south, I'm disappointed, but I'm not angry, because this is way more than I gave this team credit for when they dropped the puck to start the 2015-16 season.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is I'm not saying we should be content with this, but honestly, this season they've exceeded my expectations, and I felt like realistically, I was they can win 1 round, maybe two. I felt like they should have been a playoff team. I was they're talented enough. Last year they missed it, but that's because they were just spectacularly bad.
Right.
It wasn't the talent level. That wasn't the problem last year. The problem was the play.
It was the play. It was
the drama.
Just 1 year of too many of Todd McClellan.
It was the hangover. I mean, that's the thing, is they bounced back from that. We saw how badly that hangover drug that team down for a whole year. I mean, part of it is management did not do a good job of just trying to clear the air and get rid of it. They kind of let it permeate, let it ferment, and let it get. I think it was getting toxic at times. It really was.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, I think that's the best way to describe the Sharks last year, is completely toxic. There's not a better way to describe it. All the drama. I mean, that was the one thing this year. It was great for the Sharks, but bad for us, because we had nothing to talk about outside of the outside of the games themselves. We really had no other big storylines to follow this year. We didn't have the management kerfluffles with players and all of that fun stuff that made last year so
Shut your mouth, Doug.
Yeah,
I mean, that was kind of funny, but it was at that point, it was funny because it was we could just see so clearly how dysfunctional the team was acting. We were laughing more because it was trying to hide the pain, because it's not fun to watch your teams completely flail and act help. I mean, I've been watching the 49ers do this for 2 or 3 years now straight, but it's not fun.
No, it wasn't fun at all. It was just, it was nice when the articles wrote themselves. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, you could count on drama and stories. AJ is saying in the chat he's going to have to jump on after all this rational debate and stir some things up. And of course, Buck, you ignorant slut, AJ. No, I mean, we're not, and okay, we're not trying to be pretentious here either. Like, we're just trying, we are trying to give our honest opinions. Like Ian says, he's not a Sharks apologist. I'm not either. Like,
yeah.
If you remember all year long, I've done my share of shredding of the Sharks in wins. Like, there's been wins, like the one that comes to mind is that Flames win where they were horrible, but somehow managed to luck into a win in overtime. And just, I remember shredding them on this show. Like, no, that's not good. You play like that, you will get beat 9 times out of 10. You just got so lucky. Like, that makes up for all the times the Sharks have had bad luck. That's it going the other way. So I've defended them in losses. I thought they played well. I mean, again, and it's not always like I think they played well. It's like, I don't think they played that badly. May have gotten beaten, but like it's about the level of play as well. Like, if you see team playing well, giving the effort, and maybe it's not paying off, I mean, just keep on doing that. Just keep on doing what you're doing. It'll pay off eventually if you're doing the right things. And that's why I'm not worried. Like, I saw them doing the right things for the most part in the first 3 games. Got away from it. Got some little iffy bounces in game 4. Because, I mean, that's the other thing is also they had some really good opportunities early, and just none of them found their way behind Elliott there. Or sorry, blanking on his name again.
Jake Allen,
yeah. So I don't know why I can't remember Jake Allen's name. But no, like they had at least, I think it's 3 odd man rushes and a near breakaway in the first period, and none of them were cashed in on. Then
they didn't get any bounces, and then it just went terribly the other way.
The puck was bouncing all over the place too. In that, I mean, it's like, oh, it's SAP ice. We know how this goes. Because that's kind of the great equalizer, right? Like, if there's bad ice, you can play better than the other team, but maybe there's going to be more bounces, and when that happens, there's more luck involved. And and they're not saying it was lucky on the Blues. Like, they played really well, and I think it was Blues played really well. Sharks weren't quite focused there, and as far as the luck, the 50-50 stuff, they didn't get any of those. Like, they got no good luck there. They
got no bounces early, and then as the game went on, they just went into the abyss, unfortunately. I got a question from Vince. With time running out to get ink to paper, how likely do I think that the Sharks let Dylan Sadoway slip through their fingers? I'm concerned. I have a minor... we might hear something about Sadoway over the next couple of days. I'm been told, but I can't reveal sources or anything like that. But we might know something within the next couple of days on that front. So stay tuned. I will tweet it as soon as I know anything. What happened?
Right, I was listening to your infinite wisdom there. Actually, no, I was just checking the hashtag on, see if there's anyone tweeting at us, because I said already, you can tweet at us using the hashtag Pucknology After Dark. For some reason, all the tweets I'm seeing are showing up from... Oh, I see why.
Did you not put it the Y? Oh, no.
I misspelled it. I left the Y off Pucknology, and it looks like at least a few times we've used the misspelled hashtag. It's like the Pavelski one. Anyway, so we'll pull up the live feed, see if there's anything going on here. Nope, nothing at the moment, but you can tweet at us using the hashtag Pucknology After Dark, at ChrisJWS here. He's at I Read Pucknology. We're probably going to go for another 20, 30 minutes here talking about keys to the game. So we had a few written down here, and we kind of touched on these early, but I think like special teams has got to be a huge thing for the Sharks in this game, right?
Yeah, special teams has been the difference between the Sharks win and the Sharks loss, and like a lot this playoffs. You looked in game 1, the Sharks were arguably the better team, but special teams were garbage, and that was the difference maker. Games 2 and 3, the Sharks capitalized on almost every opportunity they got on either side of the puck, and game 4 again, power play was not very good, and they couldn't get anything going. I think that when you look at, the way they played game 4, I mean, there was more wrong than just special teams, but, having a crap special teams doesn't help anything.
Yep. Yeah. Sorry. That's the thing about having two people is like it's a little harder to get away with typing something or whatever. But yeah, no, I agree. I mean, special teams is the big thing. I said before, this power play is the best in the playoffs, no question about it. They have their off moments, but I mean, all the good ones do as well. That happens, but that's I'm not worried. I think every time they've had a bad game with special teams, the next game has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
I think it was game 4 against game 3 or 4 against the Kings. They had a bad one. The next game, I remember they scored like 2 power play goals, got perfect on the kill. Just every time they bounce back. I mean, you can only stop them for so long. Game 1 of the St. Louis series here, they stopped them, and then they were phenomenal in game 2 and just brought it. The penalty kill is a little more shaky. I don't know. Like, just please stay out of the box.
Yeah.
Because let's not chance that one. But
so Eric Furlat will be the referee tonight. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, you guys are much better than I am about researching into what refs do what, because I'd probably get more angry if I saw it. But I believe, he's responsible for our 2 no goals. If I
he was right. Responsible for the no goal in overtime for Pavelski, for the goaltender interference or whatever that how they ended up calling it, and he blew the whistle early in, I guess, game 1. So I mean, obviously that doesn't fill me with joy, but I just I don't like built-in excuses. So as much as it's not the ideal referee pair for tonight's game, it's I don't like built-in excuses. I don't want to be like, oh well, they lose because Furlat's refereeing, even though they've lost quite a bit with him refereeing. So I mean, I don't like it, but I don't want to. That's not. I don't think we want to start giving the Sharks some pre-built excuses.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're good enough. They can overcome that most nights. I mean, occasionally it's definitely burned them a few times, but like you say, it's not a good. Like if you take that if you take that as you're defeated automatically, then you're in trouble. You lost the game already. I don't think the Sharks are even worrying about that. I'm sure DeBoer is, but that's probably because he's probably making sure he's got his ducks in a row and he's ready to nag the heck out of that guy to make sure that he stays on top of things. And maybe I mean, I don't know what his long-term history is with the Sharks. I mean, maybe he just made a mistake and maybe he'll be better. And I mean, he probably knows it. I mean, did the NHL officially say that should have been a goal or no?
Yeah, they apologized for it.
Oh, thank you guys. Fantastic. Just what we needed in an empty apology. But anyways, I'm sure then he knows he screwed up. Yeah. And maybe that will, maybe he'll be a little more inclined to give the Sharks a call. Who knows? Human psychology, and the trying to compensate the other way maybe goes a little too far. We could use a break because we've definitely, I don't know. This playoffs thing, we caught some breaks, definitely got some bad breaks, but this is why I say the Sharks have overcome adversity.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the Sharks have to win tonight. It's all that matters. It doesn't matter who's reffing. It doesn't matter who's in net. It doesn't matter if Baxis and Fabry are in. They're both taking the warm-up skate. So whether they actually draw into the lineup, we don't know yet. But I mean, it doesn't matter. They've just got to win the game.
Yep, just win the game. And I quoted this earlier, but it's all time when the series is tied 2-2. Winner of Game 5 wins 78.4% of the time. That's not a fancy stat. That's just a straight up stat, and that tells you a lot. Like, it's 192 and 53 in terms of winning the series. So win the game tonight. No guarantees, but your chances of winning the series go up considerably. And I mean, if you just, well, honestly, I did the numbers. If it was actually a coin toss for the remaining 2 games, you would have a 75% chance of winning. So it's almost equal to the rest being 50-50, maybe a little bit more. But again, let's not get into all the statistical funny things you can find out about that. But the point is, win tonight. Don't lose tonight. Win it, because you don't want to have to be the team that has to overcome those odds.
No. I mean, if things go wrong tonight, then I will be hammering the panic button as hard as anybody else out there. But let's let the game happen tonight before we freak out.
I don't know about the panic button. It depends on how it goes down tonight. If it looks like Game 4, I'm probably right with you there. If it looks like Game 1 or something like that, I'm like, okay, you know what? I don't like it. I hate it. But there's still a chance.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think that I agree with that completely. I don't think if they play a hard fought game and they just, they lose to a bounce, or, just, the better team wins out of the two, but they both play good, then I'm fine with that. But if it's another game 4, then then obviously, everyone has the right to be absolutely horrified.
Yeah, at that point, I'm not going to blame you too much if you're panicking. I'll be right there with you. But yeah, if they play a close game and they lose, I won't be happy. But I'm not going to be like, oh, they have no chance, because that's probably the times when the team does have a chance, is when they played pretty well most of the series, and winning 2 in a row is not impossible. It's not easy, but it's not impossible. And you know what? If they take this to a game 7, again, that's the farthest they've gone in franchise history. Tonight, and I think we mentioned it before, tonight is right now the most important game in franchise history. Next game will be the most important game in franchise history after it.
Yeah, it kind of gets there at this point.
But I mean, that's because the Sharks have never been this far, really. Like, I mean, I believe they've held a 2-2 tie at one point in 2004.
This is the game after Game 3 was the first time they've ever led a series in the conference finals. In the Calgary series where we were 2-2, we were constantly trying to come back.
Yep. So big game. I can't be overstated how big this is for the franchise. And I hope at the very they need to come out with a good showing tonight. At the minimum, they need to win, but they need a good showing. Bad showing, it's going to be really hard to say that this team isn't done. So, couple other points I want to hit on here. Puck management. I mean, I think that was the biggest problem in Game 4 was they were a little sloppy with the puck. There were a lot. How many of those goals were off of careless turnovers? Just like that jumbo pass across the ice to nobody. I think it was Dylan who threw it up the boards, and just that did not go well. That's the big thing, is they've been really disciplined with the puck in this series up until this game.
Yeah, no, I agree. Just AJ, explain to me how a guy who admitted to blowing calls is still calling game in the freaking finals. Well, because of one of those calls actually happened in this series, he's obviously was already scheduled to work those games. Not to overly protect the refs here, but it's a lot easier for us to sit here and armchair referee the game after with the benefit of instant replay, slow motion, 600 freaking angles to look at. I think that's something that we get the benefit of. They don't have that benefit. It's a fast game. I mean, you guys have been there to watch it in person. We've all watched it on TV. This is a fast game. It's a hard game to call from that perspective. And they're human. Human error is definitely a thing, and I don't know what to tell you other than that.
Yep, agreed. And like I said, it's a fast freaking game. Like, I honestly don't know how these guys do as good of a job as they do. And again, I think they blow it sometimes for sure, but it is pretty amazing when you consider how fast it's moving, how much, because we talk about how much they miss. Think about how much they're actually getting right, which is kind of amazing to me at times. Like, so, and I don't like it either, but, if we're being fair here, it's not an easy job they have. It's a really tough job. So one last point, because I know you got a guy here in a few minutes. Finishing around the net. I mean, part of this is also luck, as we alluded to before. But they had those chances early in the game and just couldn't get it in. Whether it was goalie in their pad, it not bouncing quite right, or something like that. But I think that's the last key, is they gotta have that finish tonight.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. You gotta bury your opportunities, because it's going to be harder to set up, because Jake Allen can play the puck. But we're on me and Puck Guy were on the Winged Octopus podcast the other day with Kurt Price, who we had also on our show, and he mentioned how Jake Allen sometimes goes out to play the puck and then he kind of just doesn't know what he's doing with it and he gives it away. So if you get one of those opportunities, you got to bury it. And that's the other thing you got to watch for. Jake Allen's going to make it difficult for you because he's a good puck handler, but sometimes he just kind of loses his concentration. And if he gives you that opportunity, you got to bury it.
Yeah, definitely. So with that, we'll wrap up. Like you said, you were on, could you repeat that again? Which podcast?
The Winged Octopus podcast. You can look them up. They're on Twitter. They are on Podbean, if I am remembering correctly. I you can just look them up on Twitter. You can also go through my timeline. I've retweeted a couple of things that they have said, so you'll see it there too.
Okay, and also you can check out pucknology.net for all your wonderful Sharks coverage. Puck Guy has a piece up for this morning previewing this game, talking, is this the most important game in franchise history? To which I say unequivocally, yes. But yeah, check out pucknology.net. Be sure to subscribe below. If you just tuned in and you missed the beginning of the show, you should go back and check out a guest spot we had Matt Sammons on from the Tampa Bay Lightning organization. He's their director of broadcast. Had a lot of awesome things to say. Very, very interesting interview there. So I definitely recommend checking it out. If you haven't seen it already, you can just go watch the whole thing again. So with that, you can find me on Twitter at ChrisJWS. You can find him on Twitter at iReadPucknology. Let's hope for a win tonight, and go Sharks.
Go Sharks.